There's one sentence that has ended more relationships, created more sleepless nights, and destroyed more masculine confidence than almost any other. I need some space. The moment a man hears those words, something inside him panics. He starts texting more, calling more, explaining himself, promising to change, trying to fix everything before it's too late. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men never realize this. The very thing they do to save the relationship is often the exact reason they lose it. What if I told you that giving her exactly what she asked for, real space, without chasing, without pleading, without trying to force an outcome, is one of the most psychologically powerful moves you can make? Not because it's a trick, not because it's manipulation, but because it completely changes the emotional dynamic between both of you. And what happens next may surprise you. When a woman says she needs space, most men immediately assume one thing: she's leaving. So fear takes over. Fear convinces you that silence means failure. Fear whispers that if you don't act today, someone else will. So you send another message, then another, then you check whether she's online. You wonder why she viewed your story but didn't reply. Every hour feels longer than the last. The irony? Your fear becomes louder than your confidence. And confidence is often what attracted her in the first place. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Women don't only respond to what you say, they also respond to the emotional state behind your actions. She can often sense whether your message comes from calm confidence or desperate anxiety. That's why two men can send the exact same text. One creates attraction, the other creates distance. Think about someone holding sand in their hand. The tighter they squeeze, the faster the sand slips through their fingers. Relationships often work the same way. The more you try to control someone's emotions, the less freedom they feel, and human beings naturally resist feeling emotionally trapped. This isn't just female psychology, it's human psychology. But in romantic relationships, it becomes especially powerful because attraction depends heavily on emotional freedom. When someone feels pressured, their brain begins associating the relationship with stress instead of comfort. That shift is subtle, yet incredibly important. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes, when a woman asks for space, she isn't testing your love. She's observing something much deeper. She's unconsciously discovering how you handle uncertainty. Can you remain emotionally grounded when life feels unpredictable? Or do you become controlled by fear? Most men believe attraction is built during the happy moments, but many women quietly evaluate character during uncomfortable moments. Anyone can stay confident when everything is going well. Very few men remain calm when they don't know what's coming next, and that's exactly where emotional strength becomes visible. Imagine two different men. The first immediately floods her phone with messages. He asks if she's okay. He apologizes repeatedly, even for things he didn't do. He promises he'll never make another mistake. Every message comes from panic. The second man simply says, "I understand. Take the time you need. I genuinely hope you find the clarity you're looking for." Then he disappears, not to punish her, not to manipulate her, but because he respects both her request and himself. Which man do you think appears emotionally stronger? Which one seems like he has a full, meaningful life beyond the relationship? The answer isn't always obvious at first, but psychology rarely rewards desperation. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Giving space isn't really about her, it's about you. It's about refusing to let someone else's uncertainty become your entire identity. It's about remembering that your value doesn't disappear simply because someone needs time to think. Ironically, the men who can genuinely let go without anger, bitterness, or constant chasing often become far more attractive than they realize. But that's only the beginning, because the real psychological reason space changes attraction has almost nothing to do with absence itself and everything to do with what happens inside the human mind during that absence. And once you understand that hidden mechanism, you'll never react to "I need space" the same way again. So why does giving her space sometimes create more curiosity than constant attention? The answer begins with a psychological principle that most men completely overlook. People value what they have the freedom to choose. The moment someone feels emotionally cornered, the brain instinctively looks for an escape. It doesn't matter how much love exists. If every conversation feels like pressure, guilt, or obligation, attraction quietly starts fading. Most men never realize this. Attraction cannot be negotiated. You can't convince someone to miss you by refusing to leave them alone. In fact, the harder you chase, the less opportunity she has to actually experience your absence. And that's where it gets interesting. Imagine this situation. A woman tells her boyfriend, "I just need a little time to think." Instead of respecting her request, he sends good morning texts, good night texts, funny videos, old photos, and paragraphs explaining how much she means to him. From his perspective, he's showing love. From her perspective, every notification reminds her that her request wasn't respected. Without meaning to, he communicates something much deeper. My emotional stability depends on your response. That message is rarely attractive. Confidence says, I care about you. Neediness says, I can't function without you. The words may sound similar, but emotionally, they feel completely different. Now let's look at another man. She asks for space. He simply smiles and says, I understand. If that's what you need, take your time. Then he returns to his own life. He goes to the gym. He spends time with friends. He focuses on work. He learns something new. He laughs. He sleeps peacefully. He's not pretending to move on. He's reminding himself that his identity is bigger than one relationship. What happens next may surprise you. For the first time in days, she has silence. And silence has a strange effect on the human mind. Without constant messages filling every emotional gap, her brain finally has room to process the relationship naturally. This is where another psychological principle quietly takes over. The human brain notices changes more than constants. If someone texts every hour, eventually those messages become expected. Expected things lose emotional impact. But when someone who is always available suddenly becomes peacefully unavailable, not out of anger, but out of self respect, the pattern changes. That change creates curiosity. She may begin wondering, I thought he'd keep chasing. Why is he so calm? Is he really okay? Notice something important. She's asking questions. Questions create emotional investment. When people search for answers themselves, their minds stay engaged far longer than when every answer is handed to them. But don't misunderstand this. This is not about playing games. Many men make that mistake. They ignore her messages on purpose. They post photos hoping she'll become jealous. They pretend to date someone else. That's manipulation. And emotionally healthy women often recognize it immediately. Real confidence doesn't need theatrical performances. It simply respects reality. If she asked for space, you honor her request without turning it into a strategy for revenge. That difference is enormous. Because genuine emotional strength is difficult to fake. People can sense authenticity. Here's something even more fascinating. Sometimes the space changes you more than it changes her. The constant anxiety begins fading. Your thinking becomes clearer. You realize how much of your happiness had become attached to one person's attention. And once that happens, your conversations, if they happen again, come from abundance instead of fear. That's a completely different energy. But here's the question almost no one asks. What if she never comes back? Is giving her space still the right decision? The answer reveals one of the most powerful truths about attraction, self respect, and masculine confidence. And once you understand it, you'll stop fearing distance altogether. Now let's answer the question that almost every man avoids asking himself. What if she never comes back? At first, that thought feels terrifying. Your mind immediately jumps to the worst case scenario. You imagine her meeting someone else. You replay every conversation, searching for the exact moment everything changed. You convince yourself that one more message could fix it all. But here's where it gets interesting. The fear of losing someone often causes men to lose themselves first. And once you lose yourself, the relationship has already become unbalanced. The healthiest relationships aren't built on one person desperately holding on while the other pulls away. They're built on two emotionally complete people choosing each other again and again. That's a completely different mindset. Most men believe attraction is created by proving how much they care. While caring certainly matters, attraction is influenced by something even deeper: emotional security. Women often ask themselves questions they never say out loud. Can this man stay calm under pressure? Can he handle disappointment without falling apart? Does he have a life that exists beyond me? These questions aren't usually conscious, they're emotional observations. People don't only listen to your words, they watch your behavior. And behavior always tells the bigger story. When a man remains composed during uncertainty, he communicates something powerful without saying a single word. My happiness isn't controlled by circumstances. That quiet confidence is difficult to ignore. Think about two ships caught in a storm. One is anchored, the other has no anchor at all. As the waves grow stronger, one remains steady while the other is thrown in every direction. Life creates emotional storms. Relationships do too. When she asks for space, she's not only creating distance, she's unintentionally revealing whether you're anchored or drifting wherever your emotions take you. Most men never realize this. Women often trust emotional stability more than emotional intensity. Grand speeches are easy. Remaining calm when everything feels uncertain is much harder, and that's exactly why it stands out. Here's another hidden pattern. Many women don't immediately realize what they miss until it's no longer constantly available, not because they're trying to manipulate anyone, because human psychology adapts remarkably fast. When someone is always present, the brain begins treating that presence as normal. It fades into the background. But once that presence disappears, something interesting happens. Small memories begin surfacing: a conversation, a shared joke, the way you made her laugh after a difficult day, your favorite cafe, a song you both loved. These memories often arrive naturally, not because you forced them, but because silence gave them room to appear. What happens next may surprise you. Sometimes the absence isn't painful because you're gone. It's painful because she finally has the opportunity to feel what your presence actually meant. Of course, this doesn't happen every time, and that's an important truth. Some relationships genuinely reach their end. No amount of patience can revive a connection that both people have already emotionally left. That's why giving space should never be viewed as a guaranteed way to get her back. Instead, think of it this way: giving space reveals reality. If the relationship still has a healthy foundation, distance often allows emotions to settle and clarity to return. If it doesn't, chasing would never have saved it anyway. That realization is incredibly freeing because now your goal isn't to control her decision. Your goal is to become the kind of man who remains strong regardless of her decision. And that leads us to one of the biggest mistakes men make after giving a woman space. Ironically, they do everything right at first, only to destroy all of their progress the moment she finally reaches out again. Why? Because they completely misunderstand what her return actually means. Imagine this. Days have passed, maybe even weeks. You've respected her request. You haven't chased. You haven't begged. You haven't tried to force a conversation. Then one evening, your phone lights up. It's her. Just a simple message. Hey, how have you been? Your heart starts racing. You think, this is it. She's coming back. And that's exactly where most men make the biggest mistake of all. Instead of staying grounded, they immediately return to the same fearful behavior that caused problems in the first place. Within minutes, they're asking to meet. Within hours, they're talking about the relationship. By the next day, they're demanding answers. The emotional pressure returns, and almost as quickly as she came back, she begins pulling away again. Most men never realize this. A conversation is not a commitment. Just because she reaches out doesn't mean she's made a final decision. Often she's simply trying to understand how she feels. She's observing. She's paying attention to whether anything has actually changed. This is where emotional intelligence separates confident men from reactive men. A confident man doesn't see her message as permission to unload weeks of bottled up emotions. Instead, he stays calm. He responds naturally. He enjoys the conversation without trying to control where it leads. Why? Because he understands something powerful. Attraction grows best when it develops freely, not when it's rushed. Think about planting a tree. You don't dig it up every morning to check if the roots are growing. You water it, you give it sunlight, then you allow time to do its work. Relationships follow a similar principle. The moment you start forcing certainty, you interrupt the very process you're hoping to strengthen. Here's where it gets interesting. During the time apart, she isn't only evaluating the relationship, she's also comparing two different versions of you, the man she remembers and the man standing in front of her now. If she finds the same insecurity, the same constant need for reassurance, the same emotional dependence, she'll quietly conclude that nothing has changed. But if she notices something different, more patience, more confidence, more emotional balance, more purpose, then a completely different thought begins forming. Maybe he really has grown. Notice something important. You never had to announce your growth. You demonstrated it. People trust behavior far more than promises. Anyone can say, "I've changed." Very few people consistently act like it. Another mistake many men make is believing they must always be available the second she returns. They answer within seconds, cancel plans, ignore their own priorities, rearrange their entire life. At first, this seems romantic. In reality, it often communicates that nothing in your world matters as much as her attention. Healthy attraction doesn't require you to abandon yourself. In fact, maintaining your own routines sends a quiet but powerful message. I'm happy to see you, but I also value my own life. That's not arrogance, that's emotional maturity. And emotional maturity creates emotional safety. Women are often drawn toward men who make them feel calm, not men who make them feel responsible for someone else's happiness. Pay close attention because this changes everything. The goal was never to win her back. The goal was to become the kind of man who doesn't lose himself when life becomes uncertain. Ironically, that's the version of you who is most capable of building a healthy relationship, whether it's with her or with someone entirely new. But there's one final lesson, one truth that ties everything together. It's the lesson that determines whether giving her space becomes the beginning of a stronger relationship or the beginning of your greatest personal transformation. And once you understand it, you'll never fear those four words. I need some space. So, what is the biggest lesson hidden behind the words, I need some space? It's this: you cannot build a lasting relationship by trying to control someone else's emotions. You can only build one by mastering your own. That single truth changes everything. For too many men, relationships become a constant search for reassurance. They measure their worth by how quickly she replies, how often she texts first, or how much attention she gives them. But here's the reality: the strongest men don't base their confidence on someone else's behavior. They base it on their own character. And that's exactly why they're able to love deeply without becoming emotionally dependent. Most men never realize this. Real confidence isn't about making a woman stay. It's about knowing you'll be okay even if she doesn't. Ironically, that's often the very quality that makes someone want to stay. Let's connect everything we've discussed. When she asks for space, you have two choices. The first is the path of fear. You chase. You over-explain, you apologize repeatedly, you demand reassurance. You try to solve an emotional situation with constant communication. Unfortunately, that usually increases pressure rather than attraction. The second path is completely different. You respect her request. You stay emotionally composed. You continue improving your own life. You give her the freedom she asked for while protecting your own peace of mind. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring without abandoning your self-respect. And that difference is enormous. Here's a real-life pattern you'll notice if you pay attention. Some women eventually come back, not because they were manipulated, not because they were jealous, but because distance gave them clarity. Without the daily emotions clouding their judgment, they began remembering the relationship differently. They noticed your absence. They reflected on your value. They saw the situation from a calmer perspective. But here's where it gets even more important. Some women never return. And while that can be painful, it also reveals something incredibly valuable. It tells you the relationship had reached its natural ending. No amount of chasing would have changed that outcome. In fact, chasing often delays acceptance while damaging your confidence even further. Sometimes the greatest gift space gives you isn't another chance. It's the freedom to stop investing your heart where it is no longer being chosen. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Your mission should never be to become the man who convinces every woman to stay. Your mission is to become the man who remains centered, confident, and emotionally grounded regardless of who stays or leaves. That kind of strength cannot be faked. It shows in the way you speak, the way you handle rejection, the way you respond to uncertainty, the way you protect your peace instead of chasing validation. And women often notice that long before you realize they do, because confidence isn't loud. It doesn't beg, it doesn't panic, it simply remains steady. So the next time you hear those four words, I need some space, don't immediately assume you've lost. Don't rush to fix what isn't ready to be fixed. Don't let fear make decisions that wisdom should make instead. Take a deep breath. Respect her request. Respect yourself. Then continue building a life so meaningful that your happiness is never dependent on someone else's uncertainty. Because whether she comes back or not, you'll have gained something far more valuable. You'll have become a stronger, calmer, and more confident man. And that's the kind of transformation no one can ever take away from you. If you found this video valuable, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into female psychology, attraction, and relationship dynamics. And now we want to hear from you. Have you ever had a woman ask for space? What happened after you gave it to her or didn't? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help another man who's going through the same situation today. Until next time, remember, the man who fears losing himself is the one who chases. The man who knows himself is the one who is never truly lost.